Let's talk about the strangest of modes, Locrian. Welcome back to this in-depth series on the major scale modes. If you missed the Introduction to Modes lesson I put out at the beginning of this series, I talked about how I view modes on a scale from brightest to darkest. Last week we looked at the Phrygian mode, and this week is the last of the modes, Locrian. But before I get into this, subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of these mode lessons. The Locrian mode is the only major scale mode that isn't a major or minor mode, meaning you can't make a major or minor chord built off the root note. Locrian's formula is 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. In the key of C, that would be C, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat. The most important note in Locrian is the flat 5. This note doesn't occur in any of the other major scale modes, and that's why this mode isn't a major or minor mode, because that flat 5 makes the root chord in Locrian a diminished chord. And diminished chords have a very unstable sound, and that's why Locrian is really the hardest mode to use and the one you'll hear the least often. The other important note in Locrian is the flat 2. I'm going to play C Locrian over a C drone and focus on that flat 2 and flat 5, and you'll hear how unusual this scale is. Locrian is a mode I would reach for specifically if I wanted a piece of music to feel unresolved and tense. It works great in heavier music, or really anything where you might want a darker or more dissonant sound. As I mentioned earlier, Locrian has a diminished chord as its root chord. If I add the flat 7 to that, this becomes a half diminished chord or a minor 7 flat 5 chord. And this is a Locrian chord if I was to just hang out on it and not move. You'll most often see this chord as a 2 chord in a minor 2-5-1 progression, very common in jazz. And this chord definitely wants to move somewhere else. Hanging out on it really has this unresolved, tense feeling. Locrian chord progressions are tricky, as any movement away from the diminished chord starts to take away the feeling of that chord being the root chord because it's so unstable. Some simple chord vamps do work though, especially if the chords are more extended, something like a 1 to 3, so C minor 7 flat 5 to E flat minor 6 9, something like that. Or a 1 to flat 5, so C minor 7 flat 5 to G flat major 7 sharp 11. If you're wanting to write something in Locrian, dissonant metal riffs are a great place to start. You'll have some of the evil notes like the flat 2 and the flat 5. And Locrian can also work well for chaotic ideas, anything where you might want a more ambiguous tonality. As far as examples of Locrian in my own music, I only really have one that I can think of. Locrian is by far the least used major scale mode, and that's definitely the case for me as well. The first chord in the solo section of Manic Void by my band A Sense of Gravity hangs out on this minor 7 flat 5 chord, and you can hear how unstable and dissonant this is. Honestly, I should probably use Locrian more often because the backing track I put together for Locrian turned out to be really cool. I think in this backing track you can really hear the mood that this mode has. Locrian is a less common mode, but it's a very unique sound and can be super useful in the right context. And with that, we come to the end of this series on the major scale modes. Hopefully through all of these lessons, you got an idea of how I view the modes and how I like to use them. I write in modes all the time, and they're a fantastic tool to have in your compositional arsenal. If you enjoyed all of these mode lessons, please subscribe and hit the bell notification. It really does help me out. And I'll see you all for the next video. Until then, stay proggy.